The morning began like any other in Seoul. People rushed to work, children walked to school, street vendors sold hot food on busy corners. Nobody looked up at the sky, nobody saw the darkness coming. Ho sat in his underground office, studying old military maps. He had left the army 5 years ago to become an engineer. Now he worked on the city's power grid, a quiet job for a man who once planned battles. He liked the silence. He liked the peace. That peace ended at exactly 9:47 in the morning. The lights flickered, then they died. Ho grabbed his flashlight and ran toward the emergency stairs. When he reached the surface, he stopped breathing. The sky was black, not with clouds, with ships. Hundreds of them hung above the city like metal mountains. They blocked the sun completely. Red lights blinked on their surfaces. Strange symbols covered their hulls. Ho had seen military aircraft his whole life. These were not from Earth. All around him, people screamed and ran. Cars crashed into each other. A mother grabbed her crying child and disappeared into an alley. An old man fell to his knees and prayed. Ho did not run, he could not move. He simply watched as humanity's worst fear became real. They were not alone in the universe, and whatever had found them did not come in peace. Across the city, in a research facility near the Han River, a young scientist named stared at her computer screen. She had spent 3 years building Earth's first long-range communication array. Last week, they had sent their first message into deep space, a simple greeting, a hand extended in friendship. Something had heard them. Her colleague burst through the door. His face was white with terror. "They're everywhere," he gasped. "5 different species. They're dividing the planet. They're talking about us like we're animals." Ran to the window, she saw the ships. She heard the strange broadcast that now played on every screen, every radio, every phone on Earth. The message was translated into every human language. The voice was cold and mechanical. "People of Earth, your planet has been claimed. You are now property of the Galactic Consortium. Do not resist. Resistance will result in termination. Prepare to receive your new masters." Felt sick, property. They called humans property. In the hours that followed, the world learned the truth. 5 alien empires had detected Earth's signal. They had raced across the stars not to say hello, but to claim a prize. To them, Earth was nothing more than a resource, a new world full of minerals, water, and slaves. They claimed Asia. They were tall, gray-skinned creatures with 4 arms and eyes like black holes. They spoke of humans the way farmers spoke of cattle. They took Europe. They looked almost human, but their skin was blue and their smiles showed rows of sharp teeth. They seemed amused by humanity's panic. The Morin claimed Africa and the Middle East. They were massive, covered in thick armor-like skin. They did not speak at all. They simply pointed at what they wanted, and their soldiers took it. They took the Americas. They moved like shadows, their bodies thin and dark. They watched everything with cold interest, taking notes on tablets made of light. They claimed Australia and the Pacific. They were the smallest, but perhaps Their laughter echoed across every broadcast as they described their plans for human workers. Within 6 hours, the 5 empires signed something called the Terra Partition Treaty. They did this in orbit above Earth without asking a single human. The planet was divided. Humanity was sold. The world's governments tried to respond. Missiles launched, jets flew, soldiers aimed their weapons at the sky. It made no difference. The aliens had shields that stopped every bullet. They had weapons that melted tanks like butter. They had technology thousands of years beyond anything on Earth. In one terrible afternoon, every major military base on the planet burned. Ho watched Seoul's defense fall apart. He saw young soldiers die fighting enemies they could not hurt. He saw generals surrender on their knees, tears streaming down their faces. He saw his city, his home, his world collapse into chaos. By nightfall, it was over. Earth belonged to the aliens. The occupation began immediately. Soldiers in strange armor marched through every street. Drones flew overhead, scanning every face, recording every movement. Loudspeakers announced new laws. Humans would work, humans would obey. Humans would not gather in groups larger than 5. Humans would not look their masters in the eye. Anyone who disobeyed would be made an example. Ho hid in his underground office. He had food for 3 days and water for 5. He listened to the screams above. He heard the boots marching. He heard the alien ships roaring through the sky. And he made a decision. He would not kneel, he would not serve. He would find others like him, and together they would make the invaders regret ever finding Earth. He did not know how, he did not know when, but he knew one thing with perfect certainty. Humans were not cattle, humans were not slaves, and these aliens had made the worst mistake of their lives. 3 days later, a message arrived on his emergency radio. The voice was female, calm, and determined. My name is I am a scientist. I have discovered something about human biology, something the aliens do not know. We are different from every other species they have conquered. We can adapt, we can evolve, we can fight in ways they cannot imagine. If you want to resist, meet me at the old subway station beneath Square. Come alone, come ready to fight. Ho destroyed the radio after memorizing the message. He packed a small bag with supplies. He found his grandfather's old knife hidden in a drawer for 60 years. Above him, the alien ships continued their patrol. Their masters believed the conquest was complete. They believed humanity was broken. They had no idea what was coming. Ho stepped into the darkness of the underground tunnels. Somewhere ahead, the resistance was being born, and somewhere in the stars, the 5 empires would soon learn a lesson that would echo across the galaxy. You can chain a human's body, you can take their home and their freedom, but you can never chain their spirit, and when that spirit rises, even the mightiest empires will fall. The sky was black with alien ships, but in the darkness below, a small flame began to burn, and that flame would one day become a fire that no force in the universe could stop. 6 months had passed since the invasion. The world looked different now. Cities that once shined with lights now sat in darkness. Factories that once made cars and phones now produced materials for alien ships. Farms that once fed families now grew strange crops for alien tables. And humans worked. They worked from sunrise to sunset in mines, in factories, in fields. They wore gray clothes and metal collars around their necks. The collars tracked their movements. The collars delivered pain if they stopped working. The collars reminded them every moment of every day that they were no longer free. But the aliens had made a mistake. They thought collars could break the human spirit. They were wrong. Sung Ho wiped the sweat from his face and kept digging. He was deep underground in what used to be a mountain in province. They had found precious metals here, metals they needed for their weapons, so they had brought 10,000 humans to dig them out. Around Sung Ho, men and women worked with pickaxes and shovels. The aliens had better tools, but they didn't give them to humans. They said primitive workers deserved primitive tools. They laughed about it while humans bled. But Sung Ho was not just a worker. At night, when the guards changed shifts, he was something else entirely. He was a leader of the resistance. 30 people reported to him. They passed messages, stole supplies, and mapped the mine's weak points. They worked slowly, carefully, like water wearing away stone. And one day soon, Sung Ho would give the order, and this mine would become a grave for every alien inside it. Far away in a medical facility a woman named Ara pretended to clean the floors. She pushed her mop slowly, moving from room to room, watching everything. The aliens had taken over every hospital. They needed human doctors to study human bodies. At first, Ara had been terrified of what they might do. Then she realized something wonderful. The aliens were not studying humans to hurt them. They were studying humans because they were afraid. Earth's gravity was stronger than most worlds. The air was full of bacteria and viruses that humans ignored but made aliens sick. Human skin was thick. Human bones were dense. Human blood could carry oxygen for longer than any other species the aliens had encountered. Ara kept records of everything she learned. She hid them in places the aliens would never look. She noted their weaknesses. Their eyes were sensitive to bright light. Their hearing was poor in certain frequencies. Their joints bent in ways that could be exploited in close combat. When the time came to fight, humans would know exactly how to win. In the ruins of a man named Jun worked in an alien weapons factory. Every day he assembled the pulse guns that they used to control humans. Every day he touched the weapons that had killed his father, his brother, his friends. And every day he made sure 1 out of every 10 guns would explode when fired. It was delicate work, too many failures and the aliens would investigate. Too few and his sabotage meant nothing. So Jun walked a careful line. He smiled at his overseers. He worked faster than anyone else. He earned small rewards and avoided suspicion. Meanwhile, the resistance collected the working guns he slipped out of the factory. Soon, humans would turn alien weapons against their creators. In a hidden bunker beneath the mountains, an old man named Nam sat before a wall of screens. He was 80 years old. He had been a general once, commanding armies that now existed only in memory, but his mind was still sharp. His will was still iron. Nam coordinated the global resistance. Messages came to him from every continent through secret channels. He learned about uprisings in Germany, sabotage in Brazil, and a growing army hiding in the Australian outback. Humans everywhere were fighting back. But Nam knew they needed to wait, strike too soon and the aliens would crush them. Strike too late and human spirits would finally break. He needed the perfect moment. That moment was coming. Ho and had joined Nam's inner circle. For 6 months they had prepared, continued her research on human biology, discovering more secrets that could be weaponized. Ho planned operations, using his military training to coordinate strikes across Asia. And a young hacker who had once broken into government systems for fun now broke into alien networks. She learned their codes, she read their messages, she understood their fears. The aliens were worried. Their reports spoke of a species that refused to submit. Every other world they had conquered broke within weeks. Humans had been fighting for 6 months and showed no signs of stopping. Worse, humans seemed to get stronger under pressure. They adapted, they learned, they found ways to hurt their masters that no other species had ever discovered. One commander wrote in his personal log, "These creatures are dangerous. They smile when we whip them. They plan while they bleed. I have conquered 12 worlds, and I have never been afraid until now." Sung Ho chose a cold night in December to make his move. The guards were tired. The aliens hated Earth's cold weather, so they stayed inside their heated shelters. The humans were left almost alone. He gave the signal. 300 workers dropped their tools and picked up weapons hidden throughout the mine, guns stolen from factories, knives made from broken equipment, explosives built from mining supplies. They hit the aliens before sunrise. The garrison had 2,000 soldiers. They had shields. They had superior weapons. They had armor that could stop bullets. But they did not have the fire in human hearts. Sung Ho led the charge himself. He remembered his mother dying in the first days of the invasion. He remembered his village burning. He remembered every insult, every beating, every moment of humiliation. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the garrison was destroyed. Sung Ho had lost 120 people, but 2,000 aliens lay dead and the mine was free. The news spread like wildfire through the resistance networks. Nam smiled when he heard it. This was the spark they needed. Across the world, humans saw what 300 workers could do. If 300 could destroy a garrison, what could 3 million do? What could 30 million do? What could every human on Earth do if they rose at the same moment? The aliens felt fear for the first time. They increased patrols, they tightened restrictions, they executed prisoners as warnings. But it was too late. The fire was spreading. In orbit above Earth, Captain Wu Jin had been hiding for 6 months. Everyone thought he was dead. His small fleet had escaped the first attack and hidden among the asteroids. There, in the cold darkness of space, his crews had worked without rest. They captured alien ships and studied them. They learned how to use alien technology. They improved designs that aliens had used for thousands of years. Human innovation moved faster than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Wu Jin now commanded 50 ships, not many compared to the alien armadas, but these were ships like the galaxy had never encountered. Human ships, fighting ships, ships designed to kill. He broadcast one message on every frequency, open for all to hear. The aliens heard it, the resistance heard it, the whole world heard it. "This is Captain Wu Jin of the Earth Defense Fleet. I am not dead. My fleet is not destroyed. Phase 2 begins now. To every human who can hear this, prepare yourselves. To every alien on our planet, enjoy your last days of peace. We are coming for you." Somewhere below, Ho heard the message and smiled. The resistance was no longer just surviving. The resistance was about to win. 1 year had passed since the aliens came. 1 year of pain, of loss, of endless struggle, but the struggle had changed. Humans were no longer just surviving. Humans were fighting back and winning. Ho stood in the command center, hidden deep beneath Mount. Screens covered every wall, showing battles across the world. In Europe, resistance fighters had taken back 3 cities. In Africa, human forces had captured a Moran weapons depot. In South America, they were retreating from the mountains, hunted by guerrilla armies they could not find. The aliens no longer walked Earth's streets without fear. They traveled in armored convoys. They slept with weapons beside their beds. They looked over their shoulders at every corner. Humanity had remembered how to hunt. Entered the room with a tablet in her hands. Her eyes were bright with excitement. After a year of research, she finally understood what made humans special. "I've finished the analysis," she said. "I know why we're different from every other species they conquered." Ho turned to listen. Nam wheeled his chair closer, stopped typing and looked up. Showed them images on her tablet, graphs, charts, and data that told a remarkable story. "Earth is a brutal world," she began. "Ice ages, asteroid strikes, supervolcanoes, mass extinctions. Most planets with intelligent life are stable. Species evolve slowly in safe environments. Their bodies and minds are efficient but fragile." She changed the image to show human DNA. "Humans are different. We evolved through constant disaster. Our ancestors survived when 90% of all species died. Our bodies are built for crisis. Our minds are wired for adaptation. We don't just survive problems, we get stronger because of them." Nam nodded slowly. "We were forged in fire." "Exactly," said. "The aliens conquered hundreds of species because those species gave up when things got hard. Their biology told them to surrender. Our biology tells us to fight harder. The more they push us, the more dangerous we become." This explained everything. The aliens had never encountered anything like humanity, because the universe had never produced anything like humanity. Earth's harsh history had created a species that refused to die. Ho looked at the battle maps on the walls. "Then let's show them what we can do." Operation Broken Chain began at midnight on a Tuesday. Resistance forces across the planet struck at the same moment. 5 occupation headquarters, 5 alien empires, 1 coordinated assault. In Seoul, Ho led the attack on the command center. They had spent months preparing. Jun had smuggled weapons, had mapped every security system. Sung Ho had trained the fighters. They had 500 soldiers protecting their headquarters. They had force fields around the building. They had automated weapons on every roof. They were not prepared for 2,000 humans who had nothing left to lose. The first wave hit the power systems. Explosives planted weeks ago destroyed the generators. The force fields flickered and died. The automated weapons went silent. The second wave came through the sewers, tunnels that humans had been digging for months, tunnels the aliens had never noticed. Fighters emerged inside the building, behind enemy lines. The third wave was Ho himself. He led the main assault through the front doors, climbing over dead soldiers and broken machines. The battle lasted until dawn. When the sun rose over Seoul, the flag no longer flew above the city. A human flag took its place, rising for the first time in a year. Similar victories came from around the world. The headquarters in Berlin fell. The Moran command in Cairo was destroyed. The leadership in Mexico City surrendered rather than fight. Only the in Sydney held their ground. They were the empire and they fought to the last soldier, but even they could not stop what was coming. The five empires sent urgent messages to their home worlds. Earth was not falling as planned. The primitive species was winning. They needed reinforcements. The response came within days. A combined fleet of 10,000 ships appeared at the edge of the solar system. The largest armada the galaxy had ever assembled, sent to crush one small planet that refused to kneel. Nam called an emergency meeting. His face was calm, but Ho could see the worry in his eyes. "They're bringing everything they have," the old general said. 10,000 ships, millions of soldiers, weapons that can burn continents. Pulled up images of the approaching fleet. "They'll be here in 3 days." The room fell silent. They had won so many battles, but this was different. This was the full might of 5 empires. Even with their victories, humanity had only a fraction of that power. Then a new voice joined the meeting. Captain Wujin's face appeared on the main screen, broadcasting from his flagship somewhere in the asteroid belt. "Don't give up yet," he said. "I have a surprise for them." Wujin had not been idle during the year of occupation. His hidden fleet had grown from 50 ships to 500. More importantly, his engineers had created something new. Human ships were smaller than alien vessels. They had fewer weapons and weaker shields, but they had one advantage no alien ship possessed: they could adapt. Had shared her research with Wujin's scientists. Together, they had built ships with learning computers that analyzed enemy tactics in real time, shields that adjusted to different weapons, hull materials that repaired themselves during battle. Alien ships fought the same way every time. Human ships learned and evolved mid-battle. Each minute of combat made them more dangerous. The two fleets met in orbit above the Pacific Ocean. 10,000 alien ships against 500 human vessels. The aliens laughed at the odds. They expected easy victory. They were wrong. The Battle of the Pacific Orbit lasted 12 hours. It was the largest space battle in galactic history, and it ended in a way no one could have predicted. Human ships danced between enemy formations, learning from every shot fired at them. By the 3rd hour, their shields could block weapons that had destroyed them in the 1st hour. By the 6th hour, their targeting systems could predict alien movements before they happened. Wujin commanded from the front lines, his ship leading every charge. He lost friends, he lost crews. He watched 200 human ships die in the darkness of space. But he watched 6,000 alien ships die too. By the 12th hour, the remaining alien fleet retreated. They jumped to faster-than-light speed and fled, leaving the ruins of their armada floating in Earth's orbit. Humanity had won. On the ground, Nam watched the battle end. He smiled once, and then his heart gave out. The old general died in his chair, surrounded by the people he had led to victory. His last words were simple. "We did it. We actually did it." Ho stood in the ruins of the command center as news of the space battle arrived. Around him, alien prisoners sat in chains, the same chains they had once put on humans. Their eyes showed something Ho had never seen from an alien before. "Fear." He picked up the ceremonial blade of the commander. He held it up so every prisoner could see. "Tell your empires what happened here," he said, his voice cold and steady. "Tell them what happens when you try to chain Earth. Tell them we are coming for them next." The aliens shook, some of them cried. They had come to Earth as conquerors. They would leave as warnings. Above the planet, Wu Jin's surviving ships established a defensive line. No alien vessel would approach Earth again without facing human weapons. The blockade was broken. The skis were free. And in the hearts of humans everywhere, a new feeling replaced the pain and fear of the last year. It was not happiness, not yet, it was something stronger. It was hunger. Hunger for justice, hunger for payback, hunger to make the empires understand that Earth was not prey. Earth had never been prey. Earth was the hunter now, and the hunt was just beginning. 3 years had passed since the aliens came to Earth. The occupation was over. The invaders were gone. Humanity was free. But humanity was not finished. The leaders of Earth met in a rebuilt hall in Seoul. Representatives from every nation sat together, united in a way that had never happened before. They had one question to answer: what now? Some wanted peace. They said humanity should rebuild, heal the wounds, and forget the empires that had hurt them. They said revenge would only bring more suffering. Others disagreed. Ho stood before the assembly. He had become the supreme commander of human forces, a title he never wanted but could not refuse. His voice was tired but firm. "If we do nothing, they will come again," he said. "Maybe not today, maybe not for 100 years, but they will come. They will bring bigger fleets and weapons. Our children will fight the same war we fought. Or will wear the same chains." He paused, looking at the faces around him. "We did not start this. We only wanted to exist, but they taught us a lesson. In this galaxy, peace belongs to the strong. If we want our children to live in peace, we must become so strong that no empire will ever dare threaten us again." The vote was unanimous. Earth would not hide. Earth would not wait. Earth would make sure the 5 empires could never hurt anyone again. The Interstellar Expeditionary Fleet launched 6 months later. Admiral commanded from the flagship Unity. She was young for an admiral, only 35 years old, but she had earned her rank in the Battle of Pacific Orbit. She had watched her entire crew die when her first ship was destroyed. She had survived by luck. Now she carried their memory into battle. The fleet was different from anything the galaxy had seen. Human ships were smaller but faster. They carried fewer weapons but smarter ones. Every vessel could think, learn, and adapt. They were less like machines and more like hunting animals, working together to take down larger prey. Set course for space, that had been the occupiers. They would be the first to fall. Among the soldiers in the fleet was a young woman named One. She was 22 years old. She had been 16 when the aliens came. In the first days of the invasion, she had lost everyone: her parents, her brothers, her grandmother. Her entire neighborhood had been burned to make room for an alien landing zone. One had spent the next 3 years learning to fight. She trained harder than anyone. She slept less. She pushed her body until it broke, then pushed further. By the time the war for Earth ended, she was one of the deadliest soldiers humanity had ever produced. She did not hate aliens. Hate was too simple, too emotional. One felt something colder. She had made a promise to her dead family. No child on any world would ever experience what she had experienced. She would end the empires not for revenge, but for prevention. The first target was a military station on the edge of their territory. It was a small outpost, holding only 500 soldiers and a dozen ships. Sent 20 ships, they arrived without warning, appearing from faster-than-light travel directly above the station. They scrambled to respond, but it was too late. Human weapons were different now. During the years of occupation, scientists had studied alien technology and improved it. Human pulse cannons hit harder than versions. Human shields could absorb punishment that would destroy alien ships. Human targeting systems could track enemies that alien sensors could not see. The battle lasted 40 minutes. The station was destroyed. Every enemy ship was captured or burned. Human casualties were 0. This was not a fight, this was a message. Admiral broadcast to command. Her words were translated into every alien language. Your empire conquered our world, your soldiers killed our people, your masters laughed while humans suffered. Now we are here. We will dismantle your military station by station, fleet by fleet, until you can never threaten anyone again. Surrender now and your people will be spared. Resist and you will learn what human vengeance looks like. They did not surrender. They sent a fleet of 300 ships to destroy the humans. One was on the front line when the battle began. Her squad was assigned to board an enemy cruiser during the fighting. They launched from a small shuttle, flying through explosions and weapons fire, landing on the hull and cutting their way inside. Alien soldiers were taller than humans. Their forearms made them deadly in close combat. Their armor could stop most weapons. One did not care. She moved through the ship like a ghost. Her reflexes were faster than the aliens expected. Her shots were precise where theirs were wild. She knew their weaknesses because Ara had documented them years ago. Eyes that couldn't handle bright light, joints that bent the wrong way under pressure, nervous systems that shut down when specific points were struck. In 20 minutes, her squad of 10 soldiers captured a ship holding 200. Not a single human was injured. The main battle ended with similar results. Human ships danced around the fleet, adapting to every tactic they tried. The aliens fought the same way their ancestors had fought for 10,000 years. Humans changed strategies every few minutes. 300 ships attacked, 17 escaped. The rest were destroyed or captured. News of the battle spread across the galaxy. The other empires watched with growing fear. They were the first to break. Their leaders sent a message to Earth requesting peace. They offered to return all human prisoners, pay compensation for damages, and recognize Earth as an independent power. Ambassador was humanity's representative to the galaxy. She was a former lawyer who had spent the occupation hiding in the mountains, keeping records of every alien crime. Now she spoke for Earth in the courts of the universe. She met the leaders in a neutral station far from any empire. They expected her to be grateful for their offer. They expected a primitive species to accept whatever terms were given. Smiled politely and rejected everything. Your offer is insufficient, she said. You participated in the enslavement of humanity. You divided our world like meat at a market. You will surrender your military fleet. You will open your borders to inspection. You will pay compensation not to Earth, but to a fund for all species you have wronged." The ambassador was shocked. Those terms would destroy our empire. Nodded, "Yes, that is the point. Your empire should not exist. Any system built on conquest and slavery deserves to fall. Accept these terms or face what they are facing." Well, they accepted. One by one, the empires began to crumble. The Morin tried to fight but lost every battle. Their generals surrendered after 6 months of defeat. They saw what was coming and dissolved their empire themselves, hoping to avoid human wrath. Only Theon remained. They refused to submit. They called humanity a plague. They swore to destroy Earth or die trying. Ho received reports of their plans. They were building a massive fleet, combining their remaining resources. They believed that one overwhelming attack could still win. He studied the reports carefully. He looked at the maps of enemy space. He thought about all the humans who had died in the invasion, all the suffering his people had endured. Then he gave the order. "We didn't ask for this war," he said to his commanders. "We didn't want it, but we will end it. Send the fleet to make sure they never forget what they started." Admiral received the order and set course. Behind her, 500 human ships followed, carrying soldiers who had once been slaves. They had come across the stars not for glory, not for empire. For justice. And justice was coming. The emperor stood at his palace window and watched the sky turn dark with human ships. For 10,000 years, his family had ruled the greatest empire in 4 galaxies. They had conquered 500 worlds. They had enslaved billions of creatures. They had never known defeat. They had never known fear. Now both had come to their door. The emperor remembered the day Earth was discovered. He remembered laughing at the images of primitive humans with their simple machines and small weapons. He remembered signing the Terra Partition Treaty, dividing a worthless planet among empires who saw nothing special about its people. What a fool he had been! The human fleet numbered 700 ships now. They hung in orbit above his capital like a crown of death. Their weapons were charged, their soldiers were ready, and their message was simple: surrender or die. The emperor called his generals to the throne room. Once 200 military leaders would have answered. Now only 30 remained. The rest had died in battles across space. Battles they had expected to win easily. Battles that had destroyed everything. "What options do we have?" the emperor asked. The generals looked at each other. None wanted to speak. Finally, the oldest general stepped forward. He had fought humans on Earth. He had seen what they could do. "We have no options, my lord. Our fleet is gone. Our defenses are broken. Our allies have abandoned us. The empire collapsed yesterday. Their leaders killed each other rather than face human judgment. We are alone." The emperor closed his eyes. "Then this is the end." "There may be one chance," the general said. "The humans did not destroy the Morin. They forced them to surrender, but they let the people live. If we submit completely, perhaps they will show mercy." Mercy. The emperor had never shown mercy to anyone. He had burned worlds and laughed. He had watched slaves die and felt nothing. And now he was supposed to beg for mercy from creatures he had called cattle. The universe had a cruel sense of humor. Contact them, the Emperor said. Tell them we surrender. Admiral received the message on her flagship. She read it twice to make sure it was real. Then she turned to one who stood beside her. They want to surrender. What do you think? One looked out the window at the alien world below. Millions of beings lived there, most of them innocent. Workers, children, families who had never hurt anyone. Accept it, she said, but make sure they understand what surrender means. The ceremony took place in the imperial palace. Human soldiers lined every hallway, watching alien nobles walk past with lowered heads. The grand throne room, built to show the power of the empire, now hosted its destruction. Admiral stood at the center, wearing the uniform of Earth's fleet. Beside her were representatives from every nation on Earth. Behind her were soldiers who had survived the occupation, men and women who had worn chains on their wrists and collars on their necks. The Emperor entered alone. His generals had abandoned him at the last moment, fleeing into the countryside to hide. He walked slowly, an old creature realizing that his time was over. One stepped forward. She held something in her hands, chains, the same kind of chains that had used on human prisoners, the same kind of chains that had left scars on millions of wrists. Kneel, she said. The Emperor hesitated. For 10,000 years, no emperor had ever knelt before anyone. They were gods among their people. They were untouchable. But the human woman's eyes left no room for argument. They were not angry. They were not cruel. They were simply final. The Emperor knelt. One placed the chains on his wrists. She locked them carefully, making sure they were tight enough to feel but not tight enough to hurt. Remember this feeling, she said quietly. Remember how small it makes you, how helpless, how worthless. This is what your empire did to my people. This is what you did to children who had done nothing wrong. Now you understand. The Emperor said nothing. What could he say? Across the galaxy, news of the surrender spread instantly. The Empire, the greatest military power in known space, had fallen. Their emperor knelt in chains before humans, the species everyone had wanted to enslave. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. They were a group of neutral powers who had watched the war from the sidelines. For years, they had considered humanity too primitive to matter. Now they rushed to recognize Earth as a sovereign power, hoping humans would forgive their indifference. An ambassador addressed the council. She stood before hundreds of alien delegates, a human woman speaking to the rulers of galaxies. We did not want empire, she said. We did not want war. We only wanted to live our lives on our small planet, to raise our children in peace, to explore the stars in friendship. That was our only crime. We said hello to the universe, and the universe tried to chain us. She paused, looking at the uncomfortable faces around her. You taught us a lesson. You taught us that peace requires strength, that freedom must be defended, that trust must be earned. We learned well. We learned too well, perhaps, but we did not create this lesson. You did. The Council voted unanimously to recognize Earth's sovereignty. They offered trade agreements, technology sharing, and diplomatic relations. They smiled and congratulated humanity on their victory. But behind their smiles there was only fear. The galaxy had a new power, and that power had proven it could destroy empires. Back on Earth, the celebration of Liberation Day filled every city. 5 years after the invasion, humanity was truly free, not just free from occupation, but free from the threat of future conquest. No empire would ever dare attack Earth again. Ho stood in Seoul in a garden that had been planted where the first labor camp once stood. Flowers grew where chains had hung. Children played where prisoners had worked. The air smelled of spring instead of fear. Found him there as the sun began to set. She looked older now, her hair touched with gray, but her eyes were still bright with curiosity. "Do you think they'll ever try again?" she asked, standing beside him. Ho watched the sunset. For years he had been too busy fighting to appreciate simple things. Now he could finally enjoy the colors of the sky, the warmth of the light, the peace of the moment. "Let them," he said. "Let any empire in the galaxy try to change humanity again. We'll teach them the same lesson. We don't kneel. We never did. We never will." Above them, 1,000 human ships patrolled the stars. They were not conquerors, they were guardians. They watched the darkness of space, making sure no threat would ever reach Earth again. And across the galaxy, a story spread. It was told in alien languages on hundreds of worlds. It was whispered by slaves who dreamed of freedom. It was remembered by empires who had once felt invincible. The story of a small planet, a primitive species, a people who refused to break. They had been called cattle, they had been called slaves, they had been called property. Now they were called something else. Or humanity. The species who brought empires to their knees. In the garden, Ho smiled. The war was over. The chains were broken. The future was free. Some chains, the galaxy had learned, were never meant to hold. And some species were never meant to kneel.